Diane Keaton's passing was officially due to simple pneumonia, but inside a Los Angeles hospital, doctors discovered a strange, pale silver mark on her body and a temperature that refused to drop. This critical evidence was purged in a 45-minute digital blackout, a secret so explosive the lead doctor immediately separated from his position. The examination room in the hospital's basement lay cold and silent, a stark contrast to the lively sets she once commanded. The lead forensic doctor on duty, a man with 3 decades of experience, spent hours poring over the results. What kept his eyes fixed on the images and reports was certainty that the numbers before him did not resemble any respiratory case he had ever observed. The body before him belonged to Hollywood royalty, but the medical evidence seemed to belong to another realm entirely. Her health was thought to be stable. She still took her morning constitutional with her 2 faithful dogs and spoke frequently with her daughter in New York. The sudden nature of the vanishing, ascribed to a common infection, was difficult for those who knew her to accept. Just hours after the initial examination began, a strange chain of biological phenomena was noted, a reaction pattern that simply did not correlate with bacterial spread. A preliminary report detailing these alarming medical contradictions was filed. Yet, this crucial documentation began to disappear almost immediately. A pathology system was inexplicably locked down. The chief doctor gave a quiet instruction to the night staff. "Do not include that part in the record." He walked out, leaving behind a silence colder than the news of the passing itself. Soon, 2 technicians were reassigned, and the rest of the forensic team was asked to sign rigorous confidentiality agreements. The clean conclusion of pneumonia was to stand. The initial findings, however, had already traveled on the invisible currents of rumor. Editors at major news organizations received veiled reports, yet the televised segments all ran the same polished line. Actress Diane Keaton passes away peacefully. No mention was made of the data lockout, the missing samples, or the strange findings on her person. 3 days later, the lead forensic doctor who had overseen the autopsy separated from his position. He offered only a cryptic farewell to a colleague. "That body didn't entirely belong to any pathology I've ever known." That very night, Diane Keaton's entire file vanished from the medical system. No statements were issued, no explanations offered. Only a few stray notes, deleted messages, and quiet conversations drifted through the cafes near Beverly Grove, where young medical professionals still wondered if what they had observed was a final bodily reaction or something altogether more profound being purposefully hidden from the world. The quiet drama in that cold room left behind one final, unsettling question, a silent mystery reflected in a strange mark upon her shoulder, a mark we must examine next if we are to understand the last act of this elegant star. When the white sheet was finally lifted, the room fell silent again. Every sound. Actress's left shoulder, the medical team discovered the first physical evidence that contradicted the official story, a pale, unsettling silver mark. This mark, about 7 centimeters long, was flat, cold, and curiously waxy to the touch. Under the unforgiving fluorescent light, the skin reflected an odd shimmer, faintly coated, as if with a thin layer of keratin. It was not a bruise, not a surgical stitch mark, nor was it the site of an injection. One technician, speaking in a low whisper, commented that the mark looked less like tissue decay and more like tissue regeneration. This whispered observation was quickly stifled, yet the thought hung heavy in the room. Could a body, even in its final moments, be working to repair itself? The significance of the mark lay in its location. It was found scattered around the very area on her neck and shoulder where Diane Keaton had undergone surgery to remove squamous cell carcinoma, a form of skin cancer, in the late 1980s. This permanent vulnerability, a physical toll of the career she built with Woody Allen and Al Pacino, had become a lifelong obsession. Under the harsh lens of the microscope, the skin tissue revealed a strange inflammatory response. The cells were not simply succumbing to the natural process of perishing, but appeared to be misfiring, like an old, complicated system restarting unexpectedly. The forensic doctor, in his preliminary notes, simply wrote of an abnormal cellular activation. Just an hour later, that unsettling observation was excised from the official copy. The silence that followed was broken only by the cold reality that the iconic figure known for her witty elegance and intellectual depth was now reduced to a series of baffling biological reactions. This great artist, who had once commanded scenes opposite Warren Beatty, was presenting a human drama far more complex than any she had ever performed. Her medical history revealed a recurring battle with her own biology, and this silver mark seemed to be the body's final, desperate attempt to complete a half-century-old cycle. The tissue beneath the mark showed a keratinized structure identical to early squamous lesions. One internal draft from the endoscopist carried a line that spoke volumes. Cannot confirm malignancy, but cannot rule it out either. These vague words described a body perpetually on the border, between recovery and decline, between life and breakdown. The silver mark was not a wound. It was a scar of memory, a physical testament to a lifelong struggle. For those few doctors who glimpsed it that night, it represented not the end of a life, but the final, confounding battle waged by the body itself. This final strange warmth suggests that the body's fighting spirit had not yet left the room. Yet the silver mark was not the only mystery that night. A more fundamental paradox gripped the forensic team. In the hours immediately following the actress's vanishing, her body seemed to hold on to a residual warmth, defying the laws of simple cessation. Even in the cold confines of the examination room, Diane Keaton's form resisted the expected physiological cooling, as if some vital, internal engine had not yet accepted its final rest. Ordinarily, in elderly individuals, the body temperature drops quickly, usually within the first 2 hours after a life concludes. But with Diane Keaton, it lingered at a rare 33 degrees Celsius, or roughly 91.4 degrees Fahrenheit, even 5 hours after her initial fading. This persistence was an astonishing phenomenon, one that medical experts refer to as a delayed enzyme reaction. Such a reaction is typically observed only in cases of severe autoimmune or metabolic irregularities, suggesting a final, profound struggle had taken place within her system. It was as if her entire biological infrastructure was still geared toward endurance and renewal, fighting a battle that had been lost. The young endoscopist observing the procedure whispered a poignant observation. It's like the body's still trying to heal itself. Her organs, her cells, the very building blocks of the woman who brought charm and intelligence to screens alongside Woody Allen in Annie Hall and stood opposite Al Pacino in The Godfather, seemed to be staging a silent, persistent rebellion against the inevitable. This unexpected warmth offered a terrifying glimpse into her final moments, suggesting the departure was not a gentle surrender, but a fierce, meticulously resisted battle. For someone with Diane Keaton's lifelong history of private, intense struggles, from early cancer scares to self-imposed pressures and the emotional toll of her chapter with Warren Beatty, this delayed physiological response resonated deeply. Her body, it seemed, had been trained over decades to fight, to overcome, and to hide its vulnerability. A finding could be formally verified and included in the medical file. All related data was abruptly marked family confidential. When journalists from the entertainment world inquired, the hospital spokesperson gave only a polite refusal, deferring to privacy. But in the city where secrets travel faster than light, the truth had already been glimpsed. The body's refusal to cool, its clinging to this residual heat, served as a final, silent protest against the simplistic explanation of pneumonia. It hinted at a complex, unresolved internal drama, a final, fierce act of will by the iconic actress who once mesmerized audiences alongside Warren Beatty in Reds. This profound resistance solidified the medical community's belief that they had witnessed something beyond ordinary pathology. And this physiological puzzle was only one layer of the carefully constructed silence. Next, we must observe how the machinery of the institution moved swiftly and brutally to erase all evidence of this unsettling truth. The medical anomaly of the silver mark and the residual warmth demanded further inquiry, yet the institution's response was one of immediate, chilling control. The moment the unsettling truth about Diane Keaton's passing was about to be recorded, the digital paper trail abruptly dissolved, leaving behind a silence far more frightening than any answer. Just as the preliminary analysis detailing the unusual physiological phenomena was set to be uploaded to the pathology server, the hospital's internal system inexplicably went offline. For a precise 45 minutes, all data communication was suspended. No one claimed responsibility for this sudden blackout, but when the system finally flickered back to life, the entire report had vanished. A nurse on the night shift later confided that the file was utterly empty. Only the patient's name and a timestamp remained. The chief doctor on duty, fully aware of the international attention surrounding the passing of an icon who had shone alongside Woody Allen in Annie Hall and captivated audiences with Warren Beatty in Reds, chose silence. He did not look at anyone, but simply issued an unambiguous order to his staff: do not include that part in the record. He then walked out, leaving the stunned forensic team to grapple with a mystery that had suddenly become a sensitive political matter. The following morning, the pathology system was locked down. The entire team received an internal email instructing them to suspend all further data communication. 2 technicians who had been present during the initial examination were quietly reassigned to other departments, a clear signal that their participation in the truth was no longer desired. The rest were swiftly compelled to sign rigorous confidentiality agreements, effectively sealing the secrets of that night behind layers of legal silence. This clean, polished conclusion of bacterial pneumonia, so readily accepted by the world's media, was maintained by force. When journalists and historians began to inquire, the spokesperson for the hospital repeatedly offered the same polished deflection. No cause of passing other than pneumonia has been identified. We respect the family's privacy. But within the hospital corridors, the truth traveled in hushed tones, revealing that the original report had noted that her body's temperature did not decrease following normal physiological progression. The sudden vanishing of the original findings and the mandatory silence only fueled the suspicion in Los Angeles medical circles. It suggested that what they had witnessed was an event so extraordinary it required immediate suppression. The powerful machinery of the institution had moved swiftly to protect its reputation. The fact that the acclaimed actress, who had stood tall opposite giants like Al Pacino in The Godfather, had her final medical records purged in such a manner speaks volumes about the unsettling nature of the medical event. This was the silent control of the narrative, a final act of drama where the hospital, not the star, held the ultimate power. The position was his final, eloquent protest, a gesture that carries the weight of the untold story. The secrets unveiled in a quiet Los Angeles hospital did not begin in a final, sudden illness, but half a century earlier, in a vibrant, ambitious Hollywood that possessed a profound ignorance about protection. The roots of Diane Keaton's complex physical decline began with a seemingly routine checkup, one that marked the first dark milestone in her extensive medical history. It was the 1970s, and Diane Keaton was in her early 20s. During a standard physical, a doctor found a small, dark spot on her right temple. But the biopsy result returned cold and clear: basal cell carcinoma, a form of skin cancer. The reality of early Hollywood sets was a brutal one. Actors stood for hours under blazing, intense halogen lamps. Keaton was no exception. She underwent a surgery on her shoulder and then another procedure on her cheek. These interventions were successful, yet they left faint scars. And for an actress whose identity was so closely tied to her image, those small lines became a profound psychological burden. The diagnosis introduced an emotional element to her life: fear. She had encountered the dark underbelly of glamour, a silent price extracted by the lights that had made her a star. This early experience planted a seed of caution that would define her choices for decades to come. The experience forced a constant awareness of her own vulnerability, a feeling that contrasted sharply with the independent, formidable woman she became on screen, the woman who commanded the attention of stars like Warren Beatty in Reds. This trauma connected directly to the woman who would later choose to live a life veiled from the world. While the visible scars healed, the psychological and biological impact lingered. She developed a profound sensitivity to light, a silent torment that would lead her to cover her neck and wear wide-brimmed hats and gloves, even on warm days off the set. A Beverly Hills physician later noted that her skin would react to sunlight almost like that of a newborn baby. This early, brutal introduction to her body's fragility became the first chapter in a lifelong pattern of physical struggle. This vulnerability was not confined to her skin. It extended deep into her. One fought in silence and shame. The trauma left by the physical assault of the lights was compounded by an internal pressure to conform to a glamorous ideal, a pressure that led to a heartbreaking disorder. Beyond the glaring lights and the threat of physical affliction, a deeper, more private struggle was unfolding, a secret battle waged against herself. Hidden behind the charm that made her a darling of the screen in films like Annie Hall, Diane Keaton carried the quiet, invisible scars of a profound internal disorder. This was the 1970s. For 5 years, Diane Keaton lived in a cycle of private turmoil, a period she would later speak of with moving candor in her memoir, Then Again. The disorder she faced was bulimia nervosa, and its effect on her body and spirit was devastating. "I ate to fill emptiness, then punished myself," she wrote, revealing the guilt and self-reproach carefully concealed behind her witty persona. It was a harrowing conflict, hidden from the public eye. While the film industry lauded her effortless chic, her body was silently sustaining long-term damage. Specialists now understand that the disorder leaves deep, lasting scars on the nervous and immune systems. For an individual already facing a delicate balance due to earlier battles with skin cancer and the stress from her relationship with Warren Beatty, this internal turmoil was a dangerous, quiet spark. A geriatric specialist observed that those who had experienced bulimia in their youth often face a faster physical weakening during respiratory infections. Diane Keaton's public medical records would later show that even in her later years, she was briefly hospitalized for prolonged acute bronchitis. Yet, the weakness persisted beneath the veneer of Hollywood vitality. Though she appeared radiant at film premieres, sharing the spotlight with co-stars like Al Pacino and Warren Beatty, she increasingly required nighttime oxygen support for her breathing. She mastered the art of deflection, insisting it was just a mild cold. During the medical examination after her passing, her lungs bore silent witness to this half-century struggle. Doctors found tiny erosions and enlarged vessels, the clear physical signs of tissue repeatedly damaged and fiercely healed. One physician remarked that her body seemed like it had fought too long, not just against illness, but against itself. This lifelong internal struggle meant that when the final illness came, her system was already too exhausted from decades of fighting its own battles. The pneumonia listed on her official document was not the whole story. It was the final straw for a body that had been overworked for half a century, leaving her system vulnerable to a complicated, mysterious kind of failure. The psychological and physical toll of her secret past was destined to play a crucial part in the perplexing conclusion of her life. After the initial shock of her skin cancer diagnosis, a painful irony settled upon Diane Keaton's life. The actress who owed her fame to the dazzling screen became profoundly fearful of the very element that propelled her career. The light, once her ally, was now a constant, silent threat. Her private life became a fortress against the sun. She transformed the stylish clothing that made her a fashion icon, alongside Woody Allen, into a form of permanent, elaborate defense. Wide-brimmed hats became her signature, a non-negotiable shield against the light. She favored long-sleeved shirts, high collars, and increasingly, leather gloves, even indoors, because she felt the air itself was harsh against her fragile skin. This was a profound medical necessity. A Beverly Hills dermatologist noted that her skin would react to sunlight almost like that of a newborn baby. Throughout the 1980s, family members recalled that she almost never ventured outside during midday, adopting nocturnal habits. To combat the recurrence of her illness, Keaton underwent multiple phototherapy sessions, treatments utilizing specific types of ultraviolet light. This was a complex, double-edged form of healing. The procedures were effective in keeping her skin smooth and clear, preserving her image for roles opposite actors like Warren Beatty in Reds and Al Pacino in The Godfather. Yet these treatments came at an invisible, lifelong cost. The phototherapy, while saving her from visible scars, permanently altered her cellular structure, leaving her cells profoundly light-sensitive. The ultraviolet exposure resulted in an enduring hypersensitivity, exacerbating her existing systemic vulnerabilities. This constant private torment was a powerful driver of her later withdrawal from the public eye. The iconic figure gradually retreated to her Los Angeles home, turning the house into a carefully controlled environment where the light was perpetually subdued. Half a century later, when her body was brought into that stark examination room, the trace of this battle remained. The doctors noted tissue that had a keratinized structure, identical to the early lesions she had fought decades prior. The cells appeared to be reawakening in unusual patterns. The great irony of her life was complete. The light had given her everything, yet the light was also the relentless, silent antagonist that pursued her to the end. Her body, chemically and physically altered by the treatments that saved her life, was now poised for a final, mysterious reaction. The ultimate price of her brilliant career was a profound, permanent sensitivity that dictated her life and possibly informed her vanishing. The quiet drama in the hospital basement shifted from the strange silver mark on her skin to a much deeper, more unsettling revelation found within her vital organs. For the doctors, the discovery inside her lungs was the most frightening piece of the puzzle. This was the moment the medical inquiry transitioned from a perplexing anomaly to an alarming mystery. These words, foreign cell clusters detected, unidentifiable origin, were the most crucial finding of the post-mortem examination, yet they appeared in no public record. They were mentioned only in a brief internal note, a line that quickly vanished. One lab technician confirmed that the sample itself vanished from the system just 3 days after being logged. The implications were profound. These clusters might suggest an extremely rare autoimmune misfire, where the body's own cells reconfigure their genetic sequence. The idea was that the lungs were being attacked from within by a fundamental confusion in her own biology. This was a battle fought on a cellular level, suggesting the actress's system had been locked in a ferocious, private war. Decades after she had charmed audiences with Woody Allen and brought gravitas to the screen with Al Pacino. Experts who heard the rumors suggested that her cells were behaving in a way that defied known medical textbooks. The fact that the sample itself was purged from the system and that the supervising pathologist left his position that same weekend speaks volumes. The pathologist offered only a cryptic reply. Some bodily reactions defy medical description. I'm not allowed to discuss further. This official silence regarding the foreign clusters was more terrifying than any answer could have been. It cemented the belief among the doctors that Diane Keaton's body hadn't merely surrendered. It had, in its final moments, tried to endure. The fight was not over until the very last cell. The question of these lost cell clusters became the quiet, terrifying legacy of her passing, demonstrating that even a figure who seemed to command control of her image, whether in her earliest performances or in her powerful dramatic roles opposite Warren Beatty, could not control the final bewildering truth of her own biology. The missing evidence left the haunting possibility that the true cause was not an infection, but an act of profound biological metamorphosis. The medical professionals were left to wonder what force could provoke such an extreme, undocumented cellular response. A question that naturally leads us to observe the human cost of the cover-up. The man who refused to sanction the lie. The final chilling detail of the hospital narrative for signing the final documents refused to participate in the charade of silence, choosing professional integrity over institutional mandate. For 3 days, the supervising doctor wrestled with the unsettling evidence he had witnessed. The silver mark, the residual heat, the vanishing lung sample. He was forced to reconcile his decades of medical training with the undeniable, undocumented reality, a body that had defied all conventional pathology. Faced with the mandate to uphold this simple, false diagnosis of pneumonia, he chose the only honorable alternative. That weekend, the supervising pathologist left his position at the hospital. His act was his final, eloquent protest, a gesture that carried the silent weight of the untold story, his voice trembling slightly. That body didn't entirely belong to any pathology I've ever known. These few words became the final, unsanctioned report on the vanishing of Diane Keaton. They summarized the frustration of a scientific community forced to close its mind to a profound anomaly. The iconic figure, even in her passing, forced a major institution to wrestle with the truth. The physician's action cemented the conviction among his peers that the official story was a fabrication. The fact that the story had been sealed so forcefully only magnified the sense of profound mystery. In the ensuing weeks, the small, quiet statement of the departing doctor continued to circulate among medical staff. They were left to debate what the words meant. Was the body's reaction unique due to decades of battling cancer and its subsequent treatments? Or was it the lifelong toll of her struggles, including the emotional intensity shared with Warren Beatty? The doctor's refusal to sanction the cover-up was an act of silent resistance that honored the actress's complex humanity. His final word, that the case was better left in peace, was a weary admission that some human experiences transcend the cold, clinical descriptions of science. This profound mystery does not exist in a vacuum. To truly understand the forces that shaped this final, perplexing event, we must look backward, tracing the indelible mark left by the pit drama of Diane Keaton's life. The man who first taught her how to laugh in the dark holds a profoundly gentle chapter. Her public career and her most vulnerable self were inextricably linked to Woody Allen, a partnership that began with a nervous audition and blossomed into a 3-year romance. It was the 1970s. Allen was drawn to her unique eccentricity. Their relationship flourished in a small Upper East Side apartment in New York. Allen would later speak of her with deep affection, describing Diane as the only person who made him believe that intelligence and silliness could coexist in the same soul. Their time together culminated in the film Annie Hall. Even after their romance concluded, the artistic bond between the two remained unshakable. They continued to collaborate, a professional closeness that underscored deep, enduring respect. Diane Keaton, the Godfather, Reds, always maintained a quiet sense of devotion to her former partner. Years later, when Alan faced controversy, she chose quiet, respectful distance. She refused to add darkness to memories that were once beautiful. Her stance was a quiet defense of her own past. The enduring memory of their shared laughter remains a bright contrast to the shadows that would eventually gather around her final days. Diane Keaton's life was marked by artistic partnership, but with Warren Beatty, the collaboration was a fiery, intense, intellectual chapter. They were Hollywood's most magnetic and argumentative pair, uniting in the ambitious 1981 epic Reds. Beatty was famously a perfectionist. Keaton met his demanding nature with her own fiercely independent spirit. They argued, laughed, and argued again. The tension was creative fuel. After filming, they would retreat to the editing room to engage in lengthy discussions about politics, philosophy, and the profound loneliness of success. They were two complex individuals who recognized in each other the deep insecurities and relentless ambition required to survive. When Reds swept cinematic honors in 1982, the romance quietly concluded. Friends noted Keaton struggled profoundly. She buried herself in work, reading until morning, substituting coffee for water. This period of chronic, intense emotional stress took a physical toll. Psychologists note individuals under chronic emotional strain often suffer immune defense decline. For Diane Keaton, already battling cancer after effects and a complex past, this proved a dangerous catalyst. Her body was silently bearing the brunt of the external heartbreak. In later years, her body began to bear cracks medical professionals would recognize, a direct link between her private emotional battles and biological vulnerabilities. This constant psychological pressure, coupled with light sensitivity, set the stage for the rare medical anomaly. The chapter with Beatty was a moment where the emotional intensity of her private life directly exacerbated the fragile state of her hidden health. It was another painful cost of a life lived relentlessly in high-voltage Hollywood. Next, we turn to the figure. Final call, September 2025, lasted less than 3 minutes. "Al, I'm fine," she whispered softly. "It's just that the light feels too bright lately." Her voice was profoundly tired. Pacino later confessed he stayed silent, feeling he was speaking to someone already far away, on the other side of the light. This quiet finality underscores the theme of her vanishing. The choice for solitude, born of disappointment, became her final way of life, meticulously controlling her environment, a response linked to battles against light for half a century. Her ultimate decision to forge her own family and subsequent retreat were the graceful, final acts of a woman who chose self-definition over compromise. Diane Keaton slowly transformed her Los Angeles residence into a hermitage, a fortress guarded against the sun. After her final farewell to Al Pacino, she made her decision official. She would retreat fully into a life lived on the other side of light. Since 2021, the iconic figure had nearly vanished from Hollywood. She withdrew to her red brick home in Brentwood. The only familiar sight was a figure each morning wearing her trademark white wide-brimmed hat, taking short steps, as if avoiding sunlight. This self-imposed seclusion was rooted in light sensitivity, her constant companion since early cancer battles. The elegance of Keaton's style was revealed as necessary defense. The actress was meticulously dismantling connections to the outside world. In her later years, she sold 2 properties, keeping only the Brentwood home. Nearly $10 million from these sales went to the Los Angeles Conservancy for architectural preservation. Inside her home, the environment was controlled. There was no casual television or music, only towering wooden bookshelves, a piano beside heavily curtained windows, and black and white photographs covering walls. This deliberate choice of solitude showed an artist determined to control her final narrative. The Brentwood house was a sanctuary built to protect a body that had fought too long against the very light that had once defined it. It was a preparation, a quiet tidying up of her life before the final conclusion. Her next focus, the internal environment of this haven, where she took final, strange steps to manage her body's acute vulnerability. Diane Keaton dedicated her final months to the precise tidying up of the light within her home. These habits were a desperate, sophisticated management of her lifelong affliction. She became fiercely focused on manipulating atmosphere and temperature. The actress developed a distinct aversion to reflective surfaces. She painstakingly removed all mirrors from her bedroom. Furthermore, she shortened the curtains in various rooms to stop sunlight from reflecting off the floors. Most tellingly, she obsessed over the temperature. She instructed staff to keep the thermostat relentlessly low, maintaining air at a frigid 18 degrees Celsius, 64.4 degrees Fahrenheit, year-round. She offered a heartbreaking explanation. The colder it is, the easier I can breathe. This was a physical necessity, a final attempt to soothe perpetual irritation within her lungs. These habits were the final physical manifestations of internal battles waged against her own body for half a century. Chronic stress from her complex personal life exacerbated the physical toll taken by her illnesses. Her loved ones grew worried, sensing finality. Yet Diane Keaton always met their concern with a smile, insisting she was merely bringing order. It appeared she was preparing to leave the world while everything was still whole. This meticulous preparation brings us back to the hospital. The complex physiology requiring her to live in darkness and cold was precisely the condition that gave rise to the three unsettling medical theories whispered in Los Angeles. With official diagnosis in place, doctors sought answers in theory. The first, profound tragedy, a theory of fire where the body's own defense system, exhausted, finally turned inward. This concept suggested Diane Keaton's passing was caused by internal self-consumption, autoimmune pulmonary necrosis. Her entire system had reached a breaking point. The actress had been living on borrowed time. Her medical history, youthful skin cancer, light treatments, physiological toll, had left her immune system permanently fragile. A UCLA researcher commented her body was like a system that had fought too long. That defense mechanism became confused, turning adversary in a final, tragic act. Decades of fighting contributed to catastrophic systemic collapse. This theory aligned chillingly with reports from her final hours. Despite being fully conscious, she talked, read, even smiled. Her vital signs experienced a sudden, unpredictable decline. Blood oxygen dropped, pulse weakened, heartbeat became irregular. It was a collapse without warning, characteristic of an immune failure patient, where the body fades, but the mind remains painfully clear. Final photos of Diane Keaton in her Brentwood home seemed to confirm this idea. Her body, accustomed to fighting, was engaged in a final, private war against herself. This notion offered a poignant explanation for elusive findings. Lingering residual heat and the confused silver mark were outward signs of internal conflagration. It was a dignified, desperate vanishing, caused by the internal consequences of a life lived relentlessly under fame and affliction. This devastating possibility leads to the next unsettling theory: the bioluminescent echo. Light that saved Diane Keaton had returned. 40 years earlier, phototherapy caused a photomutation that traveled to her lungs. Her lung tissue glowed faintly, bioluminescent residue. If this theory held true, tragic irony was complete. The actress, who sought to control the light, was finally undone by the light she had trusted. It was an internal explosion, a slow-burning consequence of life-preserving measures. The third medical possibility offered a practical, yet heartbreaking, tragedy, a metabolic trap, set decades earlier by her private struggles. This hypothesis was rooted in the enduring physiological damage caused by the eating disorder she had endured for 5 years in her 20s. During her final week, blood tests revealed an extremely low concentration of antibiotic, a direct consequence of her past digestive disorder. This failure to absorb medicine ensured the simple infection escalated. These three factors, damaged immune system, light-induced cellular changes, and metabolic barrier, created a biological perfect storm, magnifying every vulnerability. Her final will, penned in August 2025, showed acceptance. "I've lived close to light for too long. Now I want to see if there's peace in the dark." The dignity of her will was betrayed by the ferocious, inexplicable resistance of her own body. The contrast between her peaceful spirit and troubled body remains the central, confounding legacy. The woman who fiercely controlled her life could not control the ultimate truth of her own cells. Missing evidence, erased notes, unsettling questions remain like echoes between two realms, where science stops and enduring belief in the unknown begins. These final fragments of the mystery, her body's resistance, elegant will, and secrets of the silver mark, remind us that even at height of fame, every star is fundamentally human. Her life was a masterpiece, but her vanishing was an unsolved puzzle. Thank you for joining us as we honored the complex final chapter of this iconic star. What part of Diane Keaton's lifelong struggle resonated most with you? Leave your thoughts and theories in the comments below. If you were captivated by this glimpse behind Hollywood's closed curtains, please hit the like button to support our work and subscribe to the channel to ensure you never miss another story from the Golden Age. Until next time, keep the golden memories alive.